Meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. This is the 43rd meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Of course, the reminder is that during the proceedings, we're in hybrid format today, and that, just so you're aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entire room in general. In terms of other reminders, we are all experts here. Today, we are pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. The committee is commencing its study of the subject of Supplementary Estimates B 2022-2023, votes 1B, 5B, and 10B under the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. And of course, that gives us the privilege to welcome our honourable colleague, Marie-Claude Bibeau, the Minister responsible for Agriculture and Agri-Food. Welcome, Minister Bibeau. Joining her from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, we have Philippe Morel, who is the Vice President of Operations. And from the department itself, we have Mr. Chris Forbes, who serves as the Deputy Minister. Welcome. And to Marie-Claude Guillard, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Corporate Management Branch. Welcome, Ms. Guillard. Minister Bibeau, it was great to see you in Saskatchewan at Agribition. Thank you for your work that you're doing. We know that this is a challenging time, and it's great to see you before the committee. I know my colleagues are looking forward to engaging with you constructively. The floor is yours. We have about 5 to 7.5 minutes. I will be reasonable with you. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. So we are here today to discuss a second round of supplementary estimates for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Our investments under Supplementary Estimates B are one more proof that our government is taking action to help farmers and food processors who have faced many challenges over the past year. To name a few, there was the pandemic, the invasion of Ukraine, significant weather disasters, such as the floods in British Columbia, and all of these in the context of high input costs. There were also plant and animal health issues like the avian influenza and potato wart. The government continues to work with producers and processors to advance on mutually shared priorities, competitiveness, food security, and sustainability. Supplementary Estimates B totals $258.5 million, which brings AAFC's total budget to almost $3.4 billion. Clearly, Mr. Chair, we are there to support the livelihood of our farmers and food processors, and that we are taking concrete action to respond to their needs. To point to a few highlights, the estimates are helping BC farmers impacted by the devastating floods. That includes $108 million for 2022-2023 to help producers cover the costs of cleanup of agricultural lands and buildings, repairs of structures and equipment, and extra transport costs to protect livestock, agricultural inputs, and so on. I was able to visit affected producers, and I can tell you that our assistance was necessary during such a difficult time. As well, the estimates allocate $33 million for our wine sector. This will give wineries the tools they need to stay innovative and competitive. Other investments under our estimates are helping farmers to adapt and strengthen their resilience to climate change. That includes an extra $48.1 million for the On-Farm Climate Action Fund and the Agricultural Clean Technology Program. These two programs are game changers, helping thousands of producers to make investments in their operation to increase their competitiveness and sustainability.
In addition to helping our farmers cope with the challenges that have arisen this year, we've helped different industries adapt to changes in the business environment. And these supply management industries in particular. In the fall 2002 economic statement, it was announced that the government will provide an additional $1.7 billion in compensation for the impacts of the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. This includes $300 million for a new investment and innovation fund that will add value to surplus non-fat solids, a byproduct of dairy processing. This new funding brings to $4.8 billion to the total compensation that our government will pay to the supply-managed sectors for the three trade agreements, the CUSMA, the European Union Agreement, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Promise made, promise kept. And for our export-oriented industries, just recently at the APEC summit, the Prime Minister announced new investments to support trade in the Indo-Pacific region, a market that has great potential for Canada. These investments include $31.8 million to establish the first Office of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada in the region to support Canadian food exports. The world is changing and evolving, and Canada must continue to diversify our markets abroad. In short, every effort is being made to support our agricultural producers and food processors. We're there to help them recover from natural disasters and health issues, thrive in a volatile environment, and transition to an even more sustainable agriculture for the future.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Madame Ministre. Et maintenant, nous avons...
Thank you very much, Minister. And now we have our question period. First of all, with the Conservative Party, Mr. Barlow, you have 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Minister for being here. It wasn't in the fall economic statement, nor did I see it in the supplementary estimates. But we do know that foot and mouth disease is a very real threat and potentially catastrophic to the Canadian beef industry. The Americans have already told us that they won't be sharing their stockpiles of foot and mouth disease vaccines. Will there be resources for a domestic foot and mouth disease vaccine bank in Canada in the upcoming budget?
Thank you. This is an important question. I have more and more conversation on this issue. Actually, when I was in Paris, I took the opportunity to speak with the head of the International Organization for Animal Health to seek her advice. So for now, we are still, collaborating for the joint vaccine bank, but I understand that it would be. So we are looking at different options right now. This is something that we are actively working on.
Okay, thank you. We also know that Health Canada issued the clarified guidance in May on the transparency of gene-edited products that will enable critical innovation. However, CFIA has still not signed off on that guidance. I understand the breeding innovation guidance that we are desperately waiting for is complete and sitting on your desk, waiting for your signature. Will you be signing that framework before the end of this calendar year, yes or no?
As you know, our government supports science and innovation, and I strongly believe that this gene editing development, innovation is important for the industry. In the same time, I just want to be sure that we do it in the correct way and we make sure that we protect the integrity of the organic sector. We will find the path forward to make it available to our producers in a timely manner.
Okay, so I'm saying that not a definitive answer there when we know that Argentina, Australia, Brazil, the United States have all passed this guidance. Dr. Martin Duplessis from Health Canada has publicly debunked most of the, if not all of the unfounded claims which you are listening to. So I would encourage you to move along and get this signed. When asked in question period on November 23rd about the impact the carbon tax would have on farmers, the Prime Minister said that more than 80% of Canadians, including farmers, get more than they pay back, get more back than they pay in the carbon tax. Is that an accurate statement?
When we are looking at families, the private, the reality, quand on parle, je vais y aller en français pour ça.
I'll speak French for this. When we look at the returns, that the reimbursements that are given to families, so 9 families out of 10 receive a higher amount than what they paid on the price of pollution. When you look at businesses, and farms are businesses, the question is different, obviously.
Family would be getting more money back from a carbon tax rebate than what they're paying, which is what the Prime Minister said in question period. I want to make sure that's what you're saying.
Je sais qu'il y a des...
I know that most farms are incorporated as businesses. Most farms are incorporated as businesses.
C'est possible de parler français. Monsieur Barlow, est-ce que tu m'entends bien?
Mr. Barlow, can you hear me when I'm speaking French? All right. Madam Minister, if you wish, please continue. So I was saying it's important to make a difference between the family and the business. When we're talking about families, there are 9 families out of 10 that receive more. When we talk about the business, And it's sure that in terms of family farms that are not incorporated, I don't have specific information, but I want to make a distinction between families and businesses.
As well on C234, finance officials stated that the average rebate for farmers through the C8 farm rebate carbon tax was about $860. Is that statement accurate?
I'm not able to specify the number.
CFIB's research shows that the average farm pays $45,000 in carbon tax. The Grain Farmers of Ontario have stated that they only receive about 15% of what they pay in a carbon tax back through C8. And now we see the fruit price guide states that by 2030, the carbon tax will cost farmers more than $150,000 per year. How do you defend the carbon tax and the impacts it's having on Canadian farm families?
I know that the greatest threat for the agricultural sector is, and for food safety in the world, is the climate crisis. It's the droughts, such as we experienced in the prairies last summer, the floods in BC, the hurricane in the Atlantic. That is the greatest threat. And I see that in the field because I travel throughout the country. I'm constantly speaking with agricultural producers, and I see how they're involved in the fight against climate change. The grain, beef, and milk producers all have commitments.
I would prefer higher taxes to tax me out of business. That is not certainly what I would be hearing at all. But I think I have time for one more question. Minister, you were at the OECD meetings in Paris. I was there with you. You co-chaired that meeting, and you also had a ministerial statement that came from that. And in the statement, it says to increase climate change mitigation efforts, we want to reduce emissions from agriculture and food systems, including things like fertilizer. Can you confirm anywhere in that statement that it says that fertilizer emissions reductions will be voluntary?
C'est un statement qui est conjoint.
It's a joint statement, but for Canada, I will say it and I will repeat it. We are really in a mindset where we want to proceed through incentives. We've invented $1.5 billion in incentives to help producers. Yes, absolutely. In Canada, our intention is that it be voluntary. Thank you, Madam Minister. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. And now, Ms. Taylor-Roy for 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the Minister to have come today. I have several questions, but I will share my time with my colleague.
Laura, thank you
Mr. Ryan.
introducing the OECD, because that's actually what I was going to ask about, because most of us know that heads of state go to the OECD for these meetings, but not everyone knows about the minister's involvement, and it was an honor to see that Canada had co-chaired the agriculture meeting. So beyond the voluntary reduction in emissions from fertilizers, I'm wondering if you could share with us what other topics were discussed and of particular importance to Canada, perhaps, and if there were any notable outcomes or takeaways that you had from that.
Thank you. Obviously, global food security was the main issue that we were all looking at and trying to see, how we can collaborate better to contribute to food security in the world. I was particularly. I thought it was particularly interesting to see how much we talked about farmers' livelihood, because it was obvious that we were all there to talk about food security, global food security. We also had virtually the Minister of Agriculture of Ukraine, so we talked about the impact of the war on food security and how we can support Ukraine as well. And we obviously talked about the climate crisis and share our best practices and identify common objectives and, yes, share, how we can do it differently, because we recognize that we all have different realities in terms of environment and agriculture. But there was a lot of emphasis on farmers' livelihood, and I thought it was very important because having been in the field across the country, very much in the last year. I could see their commitment to these best practices and new technologies, but I could see also their high level of anxiety. And obviously, our food security rely on these farmers, and we want to be there to support them. So this is why I started to say it's $1.5 billion that we are investing to support them in this transition, because they know that investing in good practices makes them also more resilient. And we've seen it in British Columbia after the flood, that those who had adopted cover cropping, for example, was easier for them to recover.
Thank you. And I think the comment that was made by the fruit and vegetable growers about the cost of the price on pollution by 2030 didn't take into account any changes in practices and adaptation of clean technology. And I know that's the point of what we're doing, so I'm glad to hear that you were sharing those practices at the OECD meeting, and we will undoubtedly see those practices put into place here. So over to you, Mr. Triple.
Thanks to my colleague for sharing her time, and good to have you here, Minister. Since the last opportunity to have you at committee, you completed negotiations of the renewal of the Canadian Agricultural Partnership with provinces and territories, and I just want to say that's a major achievement. And it affects the biggest programs that affect the agricultural industry right across Canada, all of the programs that start with Agri-Stability, Agri-Invest, and so on and so forth. And I noticed that at this time, in fact, the cap is now also has the word sustainable in front of it, which I was happy to see, which is fantastic. So my question to you, could you just explain to us any of the changes that came with the renewal of the now S-cap?
Yes, I'm glad to speak about the sustainable cap, because we unfortunately haven't had so much opportunities yet. Well, one big news is that we have increased the budget of the cost share portion by $500 million, which is significant, and it hasn't been done for a 5-year cycle already. So it's a good increase, and I'm sure you remember, but it's a 60% contribution from the federal government and 40% contribution from the provinces. A big part of it will be around the Resilient Agricultural Landscape Program, $250 million. So this program is really meant to recognize the farmers for ecological services. We have given the flexibility to each and every province, once again recognizing that the environment and the agriculture is done differently across the region. So the provinces will have flexibility to put in place this Resilient Agricultural Landscape Program. So I really look forward to see how it will roll out. We have also improved agri-stability. So you will recall that maybe already 2 years ago, we were able to negotiate with the provinces and remove the reference margin limit, which made agri-stability more equitable and generous. And my offer that was on the table for 2 years already was finally accepted by our colleagues from the prairies, and we were able to increase the compensation rate to agri-stability from 70% to 80%. So I would say that these are the highlights of the sustainable cap. And yes, the integration of climate risk within the business risk management suite is also part of it.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Maintenant, nous avons...
Now we have Mr. Perron. 6 minutes, please. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and the other witnesses for being here with us today. So, Madam Minister, I would like to talk about the positive subjects you're talking about. I really believe in recognizing environmental action, and I'd say let's invest more money even. But I have a more serious question to ask. Last week at the committee, we had 2 study sessions on importing chicken products from Ukraine. After that, there was a decree that was made quite quickly. And the next day, the CFIA emitted the import permits. So that sends a message that the committee's work is not important to CFIA. Is that a bad interpretation? It certainly is a poor interpretation. I want to reassure you. You know that we're very committed to supporting the Ukrainian people in this invasion that's just horrible. And we've put in place several sanctions against Russia and some degree of flexibility for trade with Ukraine. In the case of supply managed products, I would reassure you that this is an opening just for 1 year until CFI does the necessary work, as we would do with any new trade partners. So that opening of the market will end next June, and these supply products coming from Ukraine will have to come in through the quotas of the World Trade Organization. But, Madam Minister, that was another problem. The government has had committed itself not to do it, but it is a gesture towards Ukraine. But industry people brought up fears that I think are justified, so including avian influenza. I know you're in the field, but several parts of Ukraine declared fear. Ukraine is being bombed. They don't have electricity in their cities, so people in the industry raised legitimate concerns, and it might have been good that the CFIA wait for the committee's report before emitting these permits, and so I find that unacceptable. So to end on that topic, so say there were a recommendation or a specific entry of products. Are you open to reviewing this before June? So if our witnesses last week told us if there is a massive entry of goods, we will react quickly, but I don't know how long that would take. Can you reassure me on that topic? So I really trust in the expertise of our people at the agency. They proceeded as we proceed with all our trade partners on a scientifically based process, risk evaluation process. And I want to reassure you that the first containers that will come into the country will be inspected, and the risk of bringing in illnesses through frozen products is very, very small. If you want more technical details, I can pass the microphone to the Vice President of the agency who's here with me. And to answer the other part of your question, again, it's an overture that's really exceptional and it's temporary and that will end in June. And from then on, products will have to come in under the WTO quotas. Do you wish to have more technical explanations from the Vice President of the agencies? We'll do that in the second hour. So while I have you here, I want to talk about the tax of 5% on fertilizer. We're the only country in the G7 who's imposed it. So we should really give the money directly to the producers who paid for this tax, because this increases cost of production or it reduces the benefit margins. And what we're told about that money will bring it back, but it will be later not directly to those who paid it. So why not give it back directly to those who paid it, or simply eliminate this tax or withdraw it? So we already returned an important amount in the sector after that sanction that we're applying to Russia. And the first way of doing it was to bring improvements to the anticipated payments, so increasing from the amount of money without interest. So we think it's about $69 million that will coming back to agricultural producers. I know it's not exactly a return to every single person and every single business. Well, would be able to give them a direct return? Madam Minister, it would be simple. No, it actually wouldn't be simple. I'm sure that you know that sector really well, Mr. Perron. The way in which that return was managed by the different suppliers varies from one supplier to another, on the one hand, and on the other hand, there are reasons why this tariff was imposed, but it's not possible to return it one for one directly. We've already brought back into the sector $69 million, and we're currently studying other ways of being able to help more particularly the Eastern producers. They were the ones who were most affected by this tariff. I have some ideas that are being considered, and we're discussing with the Minister of Finance, and we're discussing with industry players to see how this could be done if we had resources to allocate for this. Thank you, Mr. Perron and Madam Minister. Now, Mr. McGregor, you have 6 minutes.
Very much, Chair. Welcome back to our committee, Minister. I always find it helpful before your appearance before our committee to do a review of your mandate letter. And the Prime Minister did say that he expects his ministers to publicly report not only to himself but to all Canadians on your progress. A growing number of constituents, but also Canadians, are quite concerned with the last point. You were called to ban the live export of horses for slaughter. I've actually sponsored a petition that in a very short while has already garnered 13,000 signatures, and it's expected to grow quite significantly. So can you please inform our committee what progress you've made, what steps you are taking to implement that very clear directive from the Prime Minister?
Thank you. Well, this is a mandate letter for 4 years. We've been dealing with a few emergencies in the beginning of this mandate. So we have started a conversation internally. I think this is something that we will have to look at very carefully, and as we always do, consult in different ways to see what's the best way forward. But if you look at my mandate letter after only 1 year, I'm still very proud of the achievement up till for first 13 months.
When do you expect you'll be able to provide an update on what direction you'll be taking with that promise?
It's hard to tell. We as I said, we only started internally for now, and once again, I've got 4 years to go through my mandate letter, hopefully. So I've learned in politics that giving a date is very risky. Okay. So I acknowledge it's in my mandate letter. And we will move forward, and we'll try to do it the right way. Okay,
yeah, I'll move on, but just note, yes. Regular basis is the term that was used. My Conservative colleagues, they were talking earlier about costs associated with putting a price on pollution. I want to juxtapose that with the costs of inaction. We know the Agricultural Clean Technology Program, one of the streams has been suspended because of the demand. I want to get a sense from you of, can you quantify that demand? And will your department be acting in future years to try and meet it? But also, the other side of the equation, what are the projected costs to programs like agri-recovery when we have these natural disasters related to climate change affecting our farmers? Because we always talk about the costs of trying to address this issue, but I don't think enough attention is paid to the costs of not doing anything and the increasing frequency and severity that these things are having with respect to our agricultural sector.
Thank you. So first question around the clean technologies. Yes, we received, I would say, at least 5 times more demands, round number, than what we could, approve in the first round. Last budget, we got an increase of we have a total of $495 million for the program now with the last increase. So recently, we've sent a letter to all of those who were not approved, who did not go through the first round, telling them that there will be a second call for proposal early next year. We will have criteria that are a bit more ambitious in terms of emissions reduction, considering the high level of interest and the fact that we want to make sure that every dollar we invest help us the most to reduce our emissions. So this is where we are now with the Clean Tech program. Concerning agri-recovery and the climate risk, this is something that I forgot to mention when I reported on the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership Agreement, is that we have agreed with the provinces to find a way to integrate climate risk in the programs. They all committed to put in place a pilot program, most likely to be around agri-recovery, but there was flexibility around that. Once again, provinces want flexibility, so as long as we keep our target in mind, I'm okay with flexibility. So in 2023, I look forward to see how the provinces will, bring their proposal for a pilot program, some kind of adjustment.
And just very quickly, because I've got the last minute, I mean, I know it's always hard to predict what's coming our way, but we do know what the costs have been associated with previous disasters, like the wildfires in BC, the flooding in the Fraser Valley. Based on information from those disasters, like, is your department projecting what the costs could be, like a ballpark? And, will you have the financial wiggle room to deal with that? Because, again, we have to ask ourselves, how many future tax dollars are we prepared to spend to deal with the mess? That's a very realistic question.
Absolutely, and this is a work that is being done under the leadership of Minister Blair. I don't have the data with me, unfortunately, but I can assure you that this is something that we are looking at very carefully. And this is why we are investing $1.5 billion in agri-environmental programming for the agricultural sector specifically. So the clean tech, the good practices, and research and innovation, including the living labs.
We'll keep it at that. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. We now have Mr. Lehoux for 5 minutes.
Merci. Bonjour, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. Thank you for being here. So, Minister, you know, as my colleague said, there was a study on the importation of Ukrainian chicken last week. Why did you quickly decide to emit the import permits the next day? Because you told my colleague, Mr. Barley, at the beginning, in another sector where it was more a question of gene editing, you wanted to take time. Why was not more time taken here to really understand the scope of this? Because all of the witnesses we heard last week expressed great concerns. So why were you so quick that rather than taking more time? The decision was made in June. So the people at the agency had the time necessary to make all these evaluations, the assessments. It was done as we would do it with other trade partners in order to make sure that we could have confidence in the product that was going to come to Canada, that product would be safe on the basis of our Food Safety Act. So with all the respect I have for the committee, it was a decision that needed to be taken on the scientific basis. Well, that's where I have a bit of a problem. This idea of the respect of the committee and the work they're doing, it would have required waiting just a few days. So maybe not recommendations on the large scale, but at least wait for a letter from the committee, because we were getting ready to write a letter, Madam Minister. So that really bothers me in terms of the respect that we have for our bodies here. But when it's said that the department at the end carried out consultations related to the questions that we asked last week, there were no consultations of these people. So when we have products that are in supply management, why were they not consulted? Because there were issues that were very interesting that were raised last week. So why were they not? Question. It's a decision that was made in the context of our support of Ukraine. So these are important sanctions that we're imposing against Russia. We carried out certain actions to support Ukraine. It's true that some key stakeholders were consulted, but it wasn't a consultation that's as broad as what we do under other circumstances when we're putting programs in place trade agreements. Yes, it's not a consultation that wasn't as broad as you would have wanted to do it, but at least contacting them would have been relevant. I would say, well, what we heard last week was that most of them were not contacted. So the most important of them would have been interested that they be contacted. So that brings me to the issue of supply management. When you're saying that you're protecting it, in your statement at the beginning, you mentioned sums of money that are on the table. I have difficulty understanding the connection between the two, because protecting supply management, but to give compensation, to make concessions to foreign countries. When you say you wanted to protect it, but not later in the beginning of 2022, you said that was it for concessions. I think that was an overture that's just for a year, but you know that these are products that we want here, so we'll have consequences that might last up to 2 years with frozen products. So it's just wind when you say you want to protect supply management. No, certainly not. And the Department of Finance said their representatives who came to see us last week mentioned that, yes, they maybe acted in a precipitous manner. So I found it interesting that they admitted that. But for you, that doesn't seem to have been the case. The reaction was totally correct in how it was done. The decision was made. There were several stakeholders that were consulted. And again, it's an exceptional and temporary measure. Yes, I agree with you. It is temporary, but it's still an overture. And I do have contacts outside of Canada. There are many countries that are looking at what's happening here, and there may be people who will try find to be more incisive in their demands. So I'm a bit disappointed in how this issue was handled, Madam Minister, and you don't have to share my point of view, but I'm a former agriculture producer and I do know the field. So I wanted to go back to the question my colleague asked you earlier on the carbon tax. Unfortunately, Mr. Lehoux, your time's up. Yes, I received a Christmas card from you, but still it's time to stop. So thank you very much. I didn't give you a card for that, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would have waited till next week. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Minister. And now, Mr. Lewis, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. I appreciate that. Maybe we just pick up the conversation where the last one left off. We were talking about the shipments, or potential shipments of chicken into Canada from Ukraine. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency said they're complying with all Canadian regulations, that they're doing full inspections, I believe, for the first 10 shipments. And there's about 3 companies possibly involved, so that'd be 30 inspections, and then about 1 in 10 shipments would get inspected. Is that a fair assessment?
Okay, so it will be the 10 first who will be systematically analyzed, inspected, and then it will be done on a risk-based analysis.
Okay, and it's also my understanding that the CFIA consulted national associations from both the chicken and the dairy industry. Is that also correct?
You're talking about CFI, or you're talking about the government when we made the decision?
The CFI, Minister.
I don't understand the question. Why would CFI have consulted the stakeholders? There's something that I don't get in your question. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I just wanted to clear up some things because we met with them last week. But maybe I'll stay with supply management. We know that our free trade agreements with trade partners are obviously important for the Canadian economy and opening up markets for our farmers. And we also know that importance of supporting our supply managed sector. So as we fully and fairly compensate Canadian supply managed sectors affected by the agreements with the European Union or Trans-Pacific or United States and Mexico, regarding the CUSMA trade agreement, you recently announced Canada's commitment to providing over, I think it was $1.7 billion to Canada's supply management sector. Can you explain how producers and processors will be able to benefit from this compensation package?
Yes, thank you. So as you know, we had already provided all the compensation or rolling out for the 2 first free trade agreement for the European Union and the CPTPP. So there was only the CUSMA left. $1.7 billion that I have announced for CUSMA only. So 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion will go to the dairy farmers in the same way as the first payment that they have received. So dairy farmers already know their payment for 2023 because it's the last of the fourth for the previous agreement. Then starting in 2024, they will start receiving the compensation still through direct payments based on their quota. From 2024 for 6 years. And for an average farm of 80 dairy cows, it will represent about $106,000 over 6 years. For the dairy sector, still there is also a $300 million innovation and investment fund dedicated to support the industry with their structural surplus of solid non-fat, sorry. Lost in translation. Solid non-fat. Then for the poultry and egg sector, we are adding $105 million in this fund. Actually, it's still the same investment fund as the one they add for the two first agreements, so we're just increasing the amount of money. This also will be distributed based on their quota, but it's not direct payment, it's investment fund. Actually, it's 112 for poultry and egg, and it's 105 for the processing, for the processors. Same thing, it will be the same investment program as they had for the two first agreements.
Well, good. Thank you for that thorough answer, because that was those are my two follow-up questions. But I'll switch to the wine industry in the minute I have left. The wine industry went through some significant changes, but it made it through with resiliency. It's a success story. Even in a changing environment, the producers managed to increase production. So can you share more information regarding the wine sector support program?
Yes, the wine sector support program. So we have announced last summer an investment program as well, $166 million over 2 years. They should be receiving their payment very soon, before the end of the year, based on their production made out of fresh fruits.
Okay, thank you. With 3 seconds left, I'll just say thank you for your time.
Thank you. Your Christmas gift to the committee, Mr. Lewis. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. We now have Mr. Parent for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, please.
Merci, Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll get back to where we were earlier. When you're saying that it's complex, it's difficult to return that 35% tax on, or tariff on fertilizers to producers. So it seems that it might be possible to give them a remission order. So I don't know, because it really doesn't make sense that these people don't get their money back. Might be something to explore. When you're telling Mr. Leroux about your desire to protect supply management goods, is true. So I hope you will support Bill C-282 that will be coming up. And now on organic standards. It's not the first time I've talked to you about it. It's important for the organics industry to look at its, have its review of standards funded by the federal government. Do you have a good news for this these people now? I'd say that it's definitely on my radar. I want to take time to look at the entire action plan of the sector, of the organic sector. There are different issues affecting them now. Yes, the renewal of the standard. We had paid for the last one, and I'm looking at what we can do for the rest. But I don't only want to look at this, I also want to look at the whole project, their entire action plan, to see what the Canadian government's role should be. But it's a sector that's very dear to me. I was know the pioneers, the Pocock family that's in my county. They were the first organic producers, and they're very close to me, and they keep me very well informed of the situation. They don't miss any occasion to do it. Yes, that's very good. So I want to reassure the pioneers that we have in Quebec. So, Mr. Barlow, earlier you mentioned gene editing. And what I heard from your last statements is that you were in favor of transparency. So since that statement, we haven't heard any more news. Can you tell us where we are with that? When will there be a confirmation of precise directives? I assure you that the team is working on this, and we want to find the best way of doing it, because as much as we support research and innovation for these new products, these new seeds, that are very important, I believe. We want to position ourselves, we want to significantly contribute to food security in the world, so that innovation is important. We want to go forward, but we have to find the way of doing it as quickly as we can while protecting the integrity of the organic sector. So that's an issue on which the agency is working at the present time. Thank you very much, Mr. Perron, Madam Minister. So now it's Mr. McGregor's turn. You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Minister, I met with the Canadian Ornamental Horticultural Alliance a few months ago, and they made mention of the ambitious plan to have 2 billion trees planted, and I know that falls under Minister Wilkinson's mandate, but we still need nurseries if we're going to try and match that ambitious goal. What they told me is that it is completely unrealistic given what Canadian production is at right now. There's no way that a nursery sector could produce that many. They said even doing 200 million trees over the next few years would be a stretch. So that's just 10%. So I know it's Minister Wilkinson's mandate, but given that it's ultimately farmers in this sector who are going to try and step up to the challenge, I'd just like to know what kind of conversations you've been having with Minister Wilkinson about this, and how is your department working with organizations like the Ornamental Horticultural Alliance, giving them some pathways to try and meet this?
I must admit that I haven't had a conversation with Minister Wilkinson on this recently. I'm just wondering if, from team to team, if you add, if not, I can just return to you later.
I mean, I'd just say we talk certainly to the Ornamental Hort organization like others, and we have a whole gamut of programs that we talk to them about that we can work on with them, and it's definitely something we've discussed with them in the past. I don't have any specific answer for you, but.
Yeah, I mean, we are often talking about sectors that grow crops, food, biofuels, et cetera, and they just wanted to sort of remind parliamentarians that they're still here and are part of that. But I guess, Mr. Forbes, could you name off the top of your head what program streams might be available to help the sector?
I'd have to go back to what ones we've talked to them about before. I mean, some of them would be ours, some of them would be, we often play a role coordinating with organizations like that and bringing in partners like natural resources, regional development agencies, and others that can be supportive, right? So we try to find what might be the right set of programs or individual programs, sometimes with the provinces too, right? So it'll really depend on the specifics of what their needs are.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. We're now going to turn to our final round of questioning, Mr. Steinley, and then we're going to go to Ms. Valdez and we'll finish up. Mr. Steinley, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Minister, do you know what percentage of Canadian farms are family-owned farms?
No.
So family-owned farms in Canada are 95% of the farms. So I want to thank you very much for being honest when you're answering Mr. Barlow's questions and saying that family farms are going to be more disproportionately affected by the carbon tax. But you can't really separate the families and the farms. So would you agree that wealth redistribution by the carbon tax is disproportionately affecting farm families?
Once again, notre prix sur la pollution.
Our price on pollution, we know it's recognized internationally that it's the best tool to fight against climate change.
In Canada.
Faudrait voir
You'd have to see what the definition is of a family farm, because I have a doubt if you're talking about the corporative level or if you're talking about the fiscal level. The definition you're giving family farm is not clear for me, because yes, family farms,
you can go ahead. I'm going to stop the clock. I think I already know what your point of order is going to be, Mr. Turnbull. Yes, I was watching closely the line of questioning. Yes, if someone asks a question, ultimately is their time, but I need to, as the chair, balance that respect level for the minister to have adequate opportunity. So, Mr. Steinley, I was watching closely. It is your time, but if you ask a question, we all want to hear the minister's response, so I would ask to walk that careful line between your principal questions that you want to ask and the minister's ability to respond. Okay, Mr. Turnbull, good? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's not my definition of a family farm. It's actually Statistic Canada's definition of a family farm. So I would say that in 2030, the carbon tax is going to hit family farms $150,000 a year. Do you think a family farm can absorb that kind of tax hit?
Encore une fois,
again, I'm not sure that we have the same definition when we're talking about family farm in terms of the family or in terms of the corporation and the fiscal level or the financial level. It's not clear for me.
I've heard recently during question period your colleague, Mr. Boisneau, talk about there being crop failures across Canada. Crop failures across Canada this year, he's talking about food insecurity as being an issue with crop failures. But I've read that we've had the third largest harvest for wheat in Canadian history. Would you agree with that?
We had a good year, definitely.
So would you be able to take that back to your colleague? Because I don't think crop failure is a part of the issue that we're having right now, food insecurity. Would you agree with that?
He might be referring of 2021, but 2022 was a good one. 2021, because of the drought, obviously, was a difficult one.
Thank you. Recently, there was a study that was done by CropLife that says, as percentage of emissions, agriculture is 8% of the total carbon emissions of Canada's total of 1.8% of the world emissions. Would you agree with that?
For my mission, I have is 10%, so you're saying 10, we're close.
Okay, thank you very much. So when you go on the world stage, other jurisdictions around the world, their emissions in agriculture is 26%. So Canada on the world stage is doing very, very well. So when you're on the world stage, are you able to make sure that we are promoting our innovation and technology and making sure that people are being able to incorporate some of that so that we can lower the world emissions?
Absolutely, and I can assure you that I'm speaking very highly of the commitment of our producers to adopt these best practices, and that in terms of intensity, we are leaders in the world. We can always do better, and this is why if you compare our way of proceeding here in Canada with voluntary target, with incentives, we are in a different world in terms of our support too.
Thank you very much. I have one last question, and that is, would you be able to bring back to this committee a list of stakeholders, agricultural stakeholders, that think the carbon tax implementation policy is a good idea and that think the reduction of fertilizer usage is a good idea?
Well, I can tell you that the beef producers, the dairy producers, and the grain producers all have a very ambitious target in terms of reducing their emissions. The price on pollution is a tool that is key, and we are investing in the transition massively with 1.5 billion up till now, and even more when you add the sustainable cap to it. And we have a voluntary target. So we are all, working together, investing in research and innovation, being in the field with our farmers through our living labs.
Thank you.
That is time. Thank you, Mr. Steinley. Thank you, Minister Bibeau. We're now going to turn to our final questioner, which is Ms. Valdez, for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome back, Minister. We all know that diversifying export markets for agriculture products is crucial for the development of the sector, and that the Indo-Pacific region is an area of high potential growth. Last month, you announced the creation of the Indo-Pacific Agriculture and Agri-Food Office. Can you give us more details about this initiative and explain why it is important?
Well, we have signed the CPTPP and to increase our potential of exports to this region. And yes, I'm very excited about this Indo-Pacific strategy that the Prime Minister has announced a few weeks ago. This was a request from the sector to increase our presence in the region. So we will have, while we already have a few trade and CFIA representatives in different countries in this region, now we are really we will put in place a full bureau that will significantly support our exporters of food to the region. So being there to represent, to assist our exporters to the region, having CFI representative there to deal with any issue that might arise in terms of just making sure that we comply to their expectation, and then so it is. I really look forward to have all the details and share it with you in terms of the number, the profile of this team, the location as well is being discussed yet.
Thank you. Last question. So many stakeholders that we've met here in committee have told us, that they're worried about the possible arrival of the African swine fever in Canada, which may have a huge impact on our ability to export this product, considering that 70% of the pork produced in Canada is exported. Can you describe what measures we're putting in place to prevent or mitigate the possible arrival of that disease?
This is, you're right, this is a disease that is extremely worrying, and this is why last summer, well, actually, we've been working closely with the industry and the provinces for years now. Since I'm here, we're working on this, making sure that we do everything we can to prevent the disease from entering into the country and being ready if it ever comes. Last summer, I announced some financing, $23.4 million, and we have recently opened a program. So this is to support the industry in different ways, to increase biosecurity measures, for example, or to adapt some processing facilities, to be eventually to have the capacity to face a massive depopulation if it ever has to be done. There's also $19.8 million that is going towards CFIA for prevention and preparedness efforts, and $2.1 million to the Canada Border Services Agency also to put additional measures in place, once again, to prevent the disease from entering the country.
We've talked a lot about food safety and how important it is for Canadians, so I appreciate the update. Thank you, Minister.
Okay, colleagues, thank you so much. I want to just say a couple things. We have a good reputation on the Hill as a committee as being nonpartisan in the sense that, yes, we take principled positions, but we do so in a respectful manner. And I want to say that I thought that was really good. And over the last number of meetings, I've just been impressed with the way we're working as a group. Mr. Steinley, I know you had a very passionate question, but I thought you were respectful, notwithstanding I had to intervene. Thank you, colleagues. No, honestly, thank you, because at the end of the day, it is important that we're able to discuss these issues collectively on behalf of the Canadian agriculture industry and farmers, but do so in a way that's principled and respectful of the whole process. So, Minister, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work on behalf of the Canadian agriculture industry. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And colleagues, we're going to break for just a short bit. You can grab a little bit of bite to eat, and then we're going to get right back with our departmental officials. Okay, thank you. Colleagues, we're going to get back to it. Thank you for the quick transition. And of course, now we have our officials. I want to start by welcoming, of course, the folks that are in the room. Thank you for your work. Honestly, we appreciate all that you do in the agriculture space with your respective agencies. There is no opening remarks for this portion. It is just, frankly, a question and answer back and forth. We'll do our rounds, and I'll take advice from you. If you want to go the full hour, we can, or if you think we've exhausted things, I will take my direction from those in the room. Mr. Nader, over to you for 6 minutes.
And it's great to be here. I'm not a normal member of this committee, so it's nice to be able to sub in from time to time, discuss some important matters. And just as a heads up, I'll be sharing my last minute or so with Monsieur Lehoux. Thank you to our witnesses today. I want to start with questions with Mr. Forbes. I'm just curious if you're aware of the total amount of tariffs that have been collected on fertilizer from Russia, and if you could split that number between pre-March 2nd and post-March 2nd.
I don't have that number with me.
Is that a number that the department would have in its possession?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a number that we would collect because we don't set the tariffs, obviously, and collect the funds. So it would be the Department of Finance or the Department of Trade that would have that.
Has the department undertaken any kind of analysis on the impact that this tariff has had on Canadian farmers?
We certainly have talked, I think, extensively, going back to last February with both suppliers and producer groups about, challenges, availability of fertilizer. I mean, the price of fertilizer, as you know, was an issue before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it's obviously risen significantly since then. So I've had lots of discussions understanding the on-ground impact, availability of fertilizer, and kind of particularly as last year we're going into the growing season, and this year preparing for next year's growing season.
And so, not wanting to put words in your mouth, but could you tell us what the results of those discussions have been? What have the stakeholder groups and farmers have been saying?
I think one of the key things that we've been looking for is making sure that fertilizer was available, right? And so making sure that the suppliers were able to get fertilizer to distribute to farmers. And certainly, while there were some worries, the feedback last year and this fall is that we're in pretty good shape in terms of fertilizer availability. I would say also, concerns about prices for producers, but probably definitely part of a larger concern about, cost of goods in a fairly high inflation environment.
Now, just confirming what we've heard earlier from the minister, there is not currently any plan to rebate those funds, which we understand is about $34.1 million, according to a recent order paper question. There is no plans to directly rebate that to farmers and farm businesses that have been impacted.
Yeah, I think what I took from the minister's response was it's very difficult to rebate the money to the end consumers because, of course, the tariff wasn't paid by farmers directly; it was paid by companies bringing the product in. But that she was looking at and discussing with the sector were there options to kind of help support them in dealing with this.
Now, we know the impact of labor shortages is having a significant impact in the agriculture and agri-food industry, particularly, I might say, in the processing capacity. What analysis has the department undertaken on the economic impact this is having on the agriculture industry, this lack of labor, particularly in the processing sector?
Thanks for the question. I mean, we hear this a lot and discuss it, I would say, probably, as you say, both with the processing sector, but obviously with producers as well. There's huge parts of the primary ag sector that rely on temporary workers and other seasonal workers to produce their products. We've had lots of studies done. I think the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council is a good source of information. I don't have any of their numbers right in front of me. Obviously, the Meat Council and others have done some good work in this area. And there are, when you talk to individual companies, obviously shortages in some skilled and lower skilled trades that are impacting their ability to produce.
Canada's food price report came out earlier this week, and they suggest that a 5,000-acre farm would see a carbon tax of about $150,000 by 2030. Would you agree with that number?
I haven't done the math. I can't agree or disagree with it.
We've heard a question earlier about the vaccine bank and basically the assumption that there won't be a joint bank. Has the department provided any analysis or set aside any funds to have a Canada-only vaccine bank?
Well, I think as the Minister said, definitely in discussions on this, we hear a lot about it from the sector and worry about being prepared. How that will roll out, I mean, we've certainly discussed with the provinces, with industry, about the possibility and how we might go forward on that, and I think that's where those discussions are ongoing.
Now, as the Member of Parliament with the most chicken farmers in the country, certainly there's a real concern in my communities about avian flu, and that's just my segue to provide my last minute to Monsieur Lehoux, who wants to ask about avian influenza.
Merci. Ma question à Monsieur.
Thank you. My question for Mr. Morel. Yes, we know there was no inspection in Ukrainian plants in 2019. In the verifications there are in Ukraine, but we see what happened there, destruction of several institutions. So can we feel safe? It's not that I don't trust them, but did you take these kind of precaution? Yes, because the process that's in place, first of all, there are inspections that are carried out. They were carried in 2019, as you said. And then after that, they had to develop control plants. They have to document it. And an importer importing chicken from Ukraine has to make sure that all documentation is there and that it be verified at the point of origin. So a very short question. If there's a larger shipment than what was planned, are the border services able to, do you have the necessary resources to be able to check everything that comes in? Yes, we will have the resources available. And as the Minister said, we will inspect the first 10 shipments, and depending on what we find, our risk system will mean that maybe we'll inspect more, or we'll do, as we do with other countries, to inspect in a with spot inspections. Thank you, Mr. Morel and Mr. Lehoux. I added close to 30 seconds as your Christmas present that's arrived. You're very generous, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Turnbull, you have 6 minutes.
Kindness and leniency with the chair, but appreciate our witnesses for being here today and the great work that you do every day for our agricultural industry. Also, so I have some questions actually referring to supplementary estimates B. One is just I wanted to understand, so the On-Farm Climate Action Fund and the Agricultural Clean Technology Program, I think, are two really important pieces of the overall support programs that the federal government offers. And I'm just wondering what have you done an assessment of sort of the need or demand for those two programs? And the other aspect of this, I think I would like to understand, or could benefit, I think, from understanding a little bit maybe how the needs may differ if you're a small, medium, or large farm. And so if you could speak to that, that would be great.
Thanks for the question. Both of these programs are relatively new, so I think one of the measures of demand is obviously the application, how many stakeholders or applicants we have, and I think as was discussed when the Minister was here, certainly on the Clean Technology Program, we've had a high level of demand for both the adoption stream, which was to help producers adopting new technologies, and also on a research and innovation stream, right? So definitely the demand has been there for those programs. Similarly for the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, which is really quite new, lots of partners stepped up. We've got, I think, 12 organizations that we're partnering with across the country to deliver this program, and so lots of interest there in the program. Look, I think you're definitely, one of the things we find with smaller producers, obviously, is that cost share sometimes, particularly challenges in adopting new technologies, and so we design these and other programs with sometimes with that in mind. The specifics, will vary from program to program, but we'll consider alternative cost shares, or sometimes, dedicating a specific stream to smaller companies or smaller producers to make sure that they can access the programs.
Thanks, Mr. Forbes. I appreciate that. And how much time do I have left? 3:30. Okay, thanks. That's with the 30 seconds you added on? Or no, just joking. Mr. Morel, maybe I'll ask you a quick question from CFIA's perspective. We've heard a little bit about concerns of avian influenza with the good remissions order and the potential for Ukrainian frozen chicken or poultry products to come across the border into Canada. But we also heard really no scientific basis, as far as I could tell, that was a real concern. I mean, it's one thing to have a concern, and then it's another thing to suspect that we might be prone to avian influenza coming. Is it not true that Canada already has avian influenza here already? And then is there any evidence to suggest that it could be coming from Ukraine based on all of your information?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, avian influenza is very present in Canada since February 2022. And of concern, but it's not transmitted by chicken coming to the country from a foreign country. The most likely scenario is that it's coming from migratory birds, and then may have an impact on biosecurity depending on how farms are built or next to each other. But likely it's coming from migratory birds, and we did see that in the spring there were following the thread of migratory birds on the east, and it moved west, and now it's moving down south from the...
So if I could just be clear, you're not concerned about it coming from Ukraine?
We're not concerned coming
in from Ukraine.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the rest of my time to Ms. Taylor-Roy.
Thank you. And as you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the impact of climate change, and we know our farmers are doing a great deal, but they are concerned about what's ahead. And as we've already talked about, the price on pollution, trying to change some of their techniques and their technology in order to ensure that the price on pollution is kept down for each of the farms. And so the National Farmers Union had spoken to me, and I'm sure to others, about the idea of a Canadian Farm Resiliency Agency, kind of loosely based on the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration, which was a very successful organization in Canada, federal government organization for many decades. To have this same kind of collaboration and focus to help farmers really share best practices, to get research and development, to talk about all the different programs, and to have a united front, because there are so many individual farms, as you know. What are your thoughts about an agency such as that to help our farmers continue their work in combating climate change?
The way I'd answer it is, I think, thanks for the question, I think it's an important one. I mean, I think we do a lot, without commenting on the specifics of an agency, I mean, between ourselves and the provinces, right, if I look at Agriculture Canada, we have 20 research centres across the country. We have research on the ground with producers, both in our research centres and also through the Living Lab program, where we actually kind of co-develop research into best management practices with groups of producers. Provinces are on the ground as well, and I think it's actually that, that combination of our own science and programming, provincial programming, I think together, given the differences across the country, right, in terms of, I think it's very regional, the needs, very specific to regions, right? I think the model we have is pretty strong. Now, could it be improved? There's probably always room for improvement, but I think we have a lot of the building blocks right now and the focus to support producers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forbes, and thank you, Ms. Taylor-Roy. Don't worry, you had a few extra seconds so Mr. Forbes could finish his thought. Maintenant, Monsieur Parent, allez.
So, Mr. Parent, please go ahead, my friend. Mr. Parent? Yes. Hello. Sorry, I didn't hear. So I would like to give a bit of context, with all due respect for Mr. Turnbull. I think that the concerns that the producers in the industry communicated to us last week were legitimate, of course. There are way fewer risks with a frozen product, but it does exist at the processing stage. And it's not to say that science is not there, but also this is a new flaw in supply management that's provoked by a government that's always promising that the last flaw was the last one and there will never be any others. So the questions I asked Minister Bibeau Mr. Morel won't be surprised that I'm asking this question. Why not wait for the committee's report before authorizing imports? So it wasn't implemented the day we were doing our study, and then very next day it was implemented. So I'd like to understand that. First of all, I don't think there's any coincidence there. The process for authorizing chicken imports followed its normal trajectory. It was long because of COVID. The audits were made in 2019, and then there was quite a bit of documentation exchanged with Ukraine and the authorities there. So it's not related to acceleration. There was no request to accelerate the process to issue these authorizations. So I'd like to understand you, Mr. Morel, what you're telling me. With all due respect, this is what I gather from your answer. You were carrying out your studies, and we had reinitiated this. We sped up the work in November to give the authorization. And even though they're parliamentarians initiating a study at the request of industry, you don't take it into account. That's what I understood. What I'm explaining, sir, is that the process is a science-based process based on information exchange and not on requests coming from a political or administrative level at higher levels. Probably if we'd had a request from the committee to wait, we would have evaluated that. But what's important is that the process is neutral. It must be neutral. There's no process of authorization at the upper level of the public service. It's a process that happens between the agency and inspectors that look at the various security measures in the country to make sure that the quality of food imported will respond to the Canadian Safe Food Act. So I'm sorry. I note that we should make requests the next time, but I think the perception from outside is not very positive. We have the impression we're doing this all for nothing, and so that's my next question, Mr. Moret. So is it worth that we make a report of this, but the decisions was made and it will be going on till June, but in our report there were proposals or recommendations for supplementary or additional inspections that should be taken into account. If there are measures to prevent risks or new information that you'll communicate to us, we would take into consideration all the information that's presented to us. The announcement made by the Prime Minister in last June doesn't only concern exporting chicken from Ukraine, but a series of measures, and the chicken is only one of the products. It has repercussions because of the authorization that was gave and that was asked for by Ukraine in 2019 and authorized not so long ago. Well, thank you for this answer. Mr. Forbes, you were asked about the tariff for Russian fertilizers, and we don't have the specific amount of this tariff, how much was collected. Well, I said that we aren't the ones who are charged with dealing with the tax, so I don't have any figures from my department that I can share. So do you believe that the issuing of a remission order for the tax might work to reimburse funds to the producers? Well, the issue is who paid these tariffs. It's not the producers that paid the government the amounts that were imposed. But the remission goes to the people who paid the taxes. Yes, that's what we hope. Mr. Morel, when we say that we could maybe write a report about this, if there is a large quantity of product that comes in, because for supply management you have to have foreseeability, predictability. So do you have a process in place in case a huge amount came into the country? In terms of the agency, we're responsible for inspecting product that arrives in Canada. Ukraine never exported chicken to Canada, so we have no history about what the potential could be. We know that there are only 3 slaughterhouses that were identified as being able to export chicken to Canada, and if they can produce the documentation necessary to ensure food safety, we will have the people in place to authorize them, and we could see what the scale is of those imports and whether there are impacts on supply management. My colleagues at Agriculture Canada will intervene, and we'll work with them on that issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Perron, Mr. Morel. Mr. McGregor, it's your turn. Please go ahead.
Mr. Forbes, I want to ask again about the clean technology program. So you've got the research and innovation stream and the adoption stream. Like in your department, I guess you're analyzing trying to quantify like the number of emissions we're trying to reduce for dollars spent. In the department's experience, like what has shown to have the most promise, like in the adoption stream? Like how are farmers making the most progress? What specific technologies are really helping them in this effort?
Thanks for the question. I mean, I'd say still it's early days in this program, and so we've certainly looked at when people were making applications at kind of expected emissions reduction. So some of it will be seeing what we get. I think we'll get more information as time goes on. But I think there are areas. We've obviously done a lot in the grain drying area. Biodigesters has been a popular item as well, right? For people with animals, and so a range of projects that we've seen. But I think the real test over time is going to be actually building up more experience and understanding what actually works and what the outcomes are. I mean, we're a little over a year into the program at this stage, right? So it's a bit early to check outcomes.
And so for the research, like the better research into biodigesters is a promising one. The grain drying, you'd say those are the 2 that's leading programs for the research element?
Adoption, for sure, right? Okay. Because that's technology that's current, is known.
Current, but I guess always room for improvement.
Yeah, and sort of where the costs may be barriers or just they're newer technologies. And then the research stream, and I don't have projects with me, but those would be kind of more moving us forward in newer technologies.
Yeah. Next month will be 2 years since the review of the Grain Act was launched, and I know I tend to ask this to you every time you appear before a committee, but I regularly have conversations with the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, and it's just kind of one of their things. They're just wondering where it's at, and if you could also add, like, during the consultation phase, how much money did your department allocate to ensure that there was broad enough consultation? And what kind of resources did you dedicate to that? And where are we at now, and what can we expect in the future?
So in terms of the consultation, I mean, wouldn't have a specific dollar because we tend not to break it down that way, but one of our goals in any consultation we do, and I think we would have achieved it on the Grain Act, is we try to be broad in terms of the options we present people, regional diversity, but also different ways of engaging, and whether that's written submissions, whether that's Zoom meetings or in-person meetings, or we try to find multiple ways to reach out to stakeholders and give them time, right, too, because producers often there are points in the year where it's not really a good time to talk to producers. So we try to be as broad as we possibly can in terms of finding effective and simple ways for those engagements to happen. On the results itself, I mean, we've published, as a What We Heard report, and I would say the internal kind of reflection on that and thinking about what the possible ways forward and how the government will proceed is still ongoing, but I would imagine that will happen in due course.
And I know you can't answer the question as to like if or when legislation could come, but can you quickly summarize was there a lot of call for the legislation to be amended? Like, was that a high priority, or did a lot of people think that more a regulatory approach under the Act's provisions?
I think the way the way I would characterize it more is that I think stakeholders look at it from the issue as opposed to, is it a legislative or a regulatory change, right? So you get questions about, yeah. I mean, it's more about like the inspection regime, right, or the science, or like, producer protection, like all these issues come up. And I think, we have to look at that package. And then there is a question, obviously, in anything like that. Is it a regulatory package? Is it just CGC's operating? Is it regulatory? Is it the legislation, or is it some mix of the three, right? So,
I also had a meeting with Soy Canada, and they were noting that there have been some pretty significant investments around the world in our competitors. And I believe our soybean research cluster is going to expire in March 2023. Can you tell us a little bit about post-March 2023 in that area?
Sure. Well, like all of our agri-science research clusters under the Canadian Agricultural Partnership will expire in March, and we've been working with stakeholders with all of the current clusters and with others as we get ready for the new Sustainable Ag Partnership, which will launch next April. So, we're in engagement with them, and certainly the expectation is that, I can't speak to precise dollar amounts or projects, but, the cluster program is going to continue. It's been a very successful one, and we think quite popular with stakeholders. We've got lots of private partner investment in research priorities, so that program will still be there. And
for that sector specifically, is the research showing promise in growing better crops with better yield, or is it also in what soybeans can be used for?
I'd have to look, quite honestly, Mr. McGregor, at what's in the specifics of the soy cluster. I mean, we've found generally that, as you point out, I think productivity is key for producers, right? For most of the clusters, there's an aspect that it's productivity, yield, disease resistance and tolerance, right, or pest resistance and tolerance. And certainly, we do get occasionally issues around the quality. Questions come up too, right? How do they improve the certain attributes of the product, right? So those would be, classically, I could say, or kind of traditionally what we would see in the cluster, in the group of projects that soy or any other commodity would have through the cluster program.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. We'll now go to the Conservatives. I think Mr. Barlow is going to lead us off.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to split my time with Mr. Steinley. Just a couple of quick questions. We did talk about the gene editing framework that was there, and I know this was signed off on by Health Canada in May. We are now 8 months past that, when we have most of our trading partners, including the United States, who already have this framework in place. The minister did mention that more research on her side has to be done. But when you do have the support of Health Canada signing off on this, and we thought the novel food side would be the holdup, but this is on the biosecurity and on the animal side. So what is the holdup, and what is the timeline in getting this completed and signed off on?
We were just debating who was going to take this question. So I think, as the minister said, I think there's I don't think it's research per se. I think it's the way I put it is that there's the work I think has largely been done on how to update the guidelines from CFIA. I think the question that has been raised by the organic sector is, how does this match with their needs from their approach to certifying organic products? And I think there's discussions ongoing on how to move forward. And I think, as the minister said, support the innovation, the innovation that we need, that this tool can provide, right, to support us with all the challenges we face, while at the same time, I think, meeting the needs of kind of the certification or standards of the organic sector. And so I think that's, as she said, that's a priority and something that's
and I do appreciate that, Mr. Forbes, that you do understand how important this is and how critical it is for that innovation and technology, and nothing against the organic side, but the rest of the industry is waiting for this to be moved on, and it certainly, if you could address their concerns, but the greater good is an issue here, and I appreciate it. Just move on to Mr. Morrell here and maybe Chris, it's to you as well, but on the PI potato issue, farmers have received about $4.2 million in compensation from CFIA and lost sales. However, we do know that the estimated loss on seed sales are probably more than $10 million. the federal government announced as much as $28 million in funding was available for PEI potatoes. Do you know how much of that $28 million has been allocated or been accessed?
That's me. Yeah, sorry. Nice try.
I'm trying to get you off the hook.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So I think I don't have the precise number, but I would say the vast majority, I'd say 20, will you say 21 million? So he's got the answer. 21 million has been, yeah, he did have the answer, but it was me to do it. So 21 million allocated so far. Yes, so that's the number.
Okay. I know Mr. Morel can maybe answer this really quick one, but I've also heard from PEI farmers that other vegetables now, carrots, onions, and turnips are being, CFI is not giving them export certification due to soil concerns. Is that factual?
Well, that's correct, because what we're managing is the potato warts, the pest, and the soil that could be on vegetables. So if it is, and they're not washed, they need to have the same kind of process than potatoes. So it's not only for potatoes.
Is this a new protocol?
No, it's the same. It's the same. Those industries are way less impacted because they already had the process in place to clean and remove the soil, so that's why we heard less of them. Just to correct you also, not that I want to correct you, but compensation, until now we have spent more than $6 million on compensation to 33 growers for seed potatoes that were destroyed.
All right, I have a few rapid-fire questions. My first would be, would you be able to bring a breakdown of the 8% of agriculture emissions to this committee so that we could see what sectors of agriculture is emitting a certain percentage?
Yes, I can definitely share with you. It would come from the National Inventory Report, but we can break it down by sources for sure.
Perfect. Another thing I was wondering if the department would have is a list of agricultural stakeholders that were consulted prior to ECCC announcing the fertilizer reduction targets.
I mean, we would tend not to, well, a couple of things. I don't know that we keep lists like that, so probably the answer would be no. But I would say on these issues, Mr. Steinley, like our engagement is ongoing, right? Like in the sense that, I would imagine, I know we're talking to all of these stakeholder groups on a regular basis about these and other issues, right?
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. And my last question, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask it. Could I have more of a breakdown of the $24 million that is going to water infrastructure in Saskatchewan? I'm assuming a large chunk would be the Lake Baker irrigation project, which is of huge importance to my home province, and we're looking forward to moving ahead with that. But is there a more detailed breakdown of that $24 million going to water infrastructure in the province of Saskatchewan?
I may ask my colleague, Madame Garrard, to answer that.
Yes, that the 24 million will be used by the department to our own infrastructure. It's the total transfer was done to AFC. That 24 million.
Thank you.
Okay, good news for Saskatchewan. We'll now turn to, I think it's Ms. Taylor-Roy on this side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here and answering more questions. As we've already been discussing, we know that our farmers are, already contributing to fight climate change. And given the investment in new programs, clean tech and on-farm, et cetera, we're doing more. And as our colleagues have mentioned, with the full price of pollution being incorporated by 2030, there's even greater incentive to expedite some of those changes, given it's now part of the cost-benefit equation. So but they're also on the front line in terms of the impacts of climate change, as we've discussed some of the droughts and the floods and things that have been happening. And I saw in the supplementary estimates that there was $100 million in statutory authorities for the Agri-Recovery Program, which I believe deals with these disasters. So I'm just wondering, are you anticipating that in 22, 23, that number is going to grow? Mary Claude, I think you do the finance. Do you expect that's going to be a larger number as we've had to, obviously put supplementary estimates in? Are we budgeting for more? And how do you see that number being mitigated, perhaps, by some of the action that's being taken by our farmers to decrease emissions?
I might take it. That's okay. Sorry. So this $100 million is specifically for the the agri-recovery program in BC for the response to the BC floods. And so it's that we had a little bit of money in last year's, in the 21-22, and so this is the rest of that program, which is a follow. I think the go-forward question would be, I think the last few years would show us, and we've obviously since this, we've also had Hurricane Fiona hit eastern Canada, that the frequency and the kind of regional scope of some of these events seems to be growing, right? So yes, we think agri-recovery program could be under pressure in the future. I don't have precise numbers for you, but I would expect between that and our agri-insurance program, agri-stability, the whole BRM suite, as the minister said, these challenges will in cases hit producers quite hard.
Thank you very much.
Okay, colleagues, I know Mr. McGregor has indicated to me that he's finished and exhausted his questions. I believe the Tories largely are as well. Monsieur Perron, tu as 2 minutes 30 secondes si tu voudrais.
Oui, merci, Monsieur.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for Mr. Forbes. I don't know if you're aware, and I hope you are, of the phenomenon of trucks are coming from the States, from biosolids, waste from municipal water systems that are forbidden in the U.S., but they're coming for us, and it seems to be not very good for the soil because our producers are receiving money in order to spread this. Are you aware of this? I am aware of this, but it's Mr. Morel who will answer the question. So, yes, we are aware of it. The agency is involved in this kind of biosolid imports when they're destined to be used as fertilizers. So that seems to be the case, according to the news reports published this week. And we're working with Environment and Climate Change Canada on the plan of chemicals management to make sure that it's well managed. So there's no indication so far that there is a high enough presence of PSAF that would have an impact on animal or human health. So we continue to make sure that the sampling is done at the point of origin, and that when they are taken in Canada, that they can be accepted. The province of Quebec has no rule forbidding the use or the presence of these products on its territory. So we make sure that this is not forbidden anywhere in Canadian regulation, and it's not the case. Well, because there is a major concern. The concentrations are 5 times higher than what's allowed in the U.S., which is why it cannot be used in the U.S. So I think it raises something that you should look at seriously. So do I still have 15 seconds, Mr. Chair? I would like to ask Mr. Morel, do you have any studies on the MRS standard in bovine killing, slaughter? Because there are some businesses that might do better if that standard could be modified without any risk for food safety, because the standard of risk is quite negligible. It has been for quite a long time. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this question. So currently we're working with industry to see what could be affected in relation to the OIE as a decision of negligible status granted to Canada. So we're carrying out a risk analysis, but you have to take into account the fact that the context is different in Canada than it is in Canada and the U.S., and there are risks. If they're found in Canada, it would be our status would change for a long time. So what we're trying to do with our risk analysis is to work with industry to make sure that the risk of impacting long-term trade for the bovine industry be as small as possible. We can't decide that quickly. Unfortunately, Mr. Perron, I have added a minute, so I'm going to get another Christmas card before Christmas. Thank you very much, Mr. Morel. And I made a small error because we do have another question, a short question, I believe. Mr. Lehoux. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A very brief question for Mr. Forbes related to immigration, because you know that there are processing plants that have a very serious labor shortage because they're thinking of closing some shifts because they don't have enough manpower to function all the time. So do you have any talks with the Minister of Immigration? Because twice we've been asking the Minister to come and see us here. And on your side, were there changes that could be made through the Department of Agriculture to make sure that that process goes more quickly so these workers can come quickly? So all the work has been prepared by the businesses, but we're just waiting for the paperwork to be made. Thank you for the question. We're working in close collaboration with the Department of Immigration and Ministry of Labour also to improve or accelerate access to the labour market for the processing plants as priority for the minister who's working on a strategy for the sector. Thank you, Mr. Forbes. You're discussing with them. Well, they're discussing with you. That's good. We don't see them.
Forbes, as the Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Agri-Food, thank you for your work and leadership. Mr. Morel, thank you for your work with CFIA, and Madame Guillard, thank you so much for your work with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Colleagues, that ends our session here today. Enjoy your time back in your constituencies. We'll see you Monday, where we're going to be continuing our study on grocery food prices, I guess is how. I don't know if we have an official title, but it's something along that line. Yeah, maybe not that, Mr. McGregor, but we'll see you back on Monday. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, j'aurais juste un état de...
Mr. Chair, given that it's just 5:20, well, not for the witnesses, but I have a question. Is the continuation that's anticipated for the study we carried out last week for the import of Ukrainian products. Understood that we could write specific requests to CFIA.